More than 70 years after the end of the Second World War, these are dark days for France's Jews. The fear of being attacked is ever present in a community repeatedly targeted by Islamist militants, whether it be Mohamed Merah gunning down small children at a Jewish school or Amadi Koulibaly shooting dead shoppers at a Jewish supermarket. As a result, record numbers of French Jews are taking up Benjamin Netanyahu's offer and seeking sanctuary in Israel. Well, the Israeli ambassador to France is Eliza bin Noon, and she joins us now. Thank you, Ambassador, for taking the time to come to Euronews.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you.
You took over the job in Paris 5-6 months ago now.
Yes.
How does it feel to be Israel's top diplomat in a country where soldiers are posted outside synagogues and where people are being physically attacked and even killed just for being Jewish?
Well, first of all, I'm very happy to be in France as an ambassador. The first woman ambassador. For me, it's really a dream, that is coming true. Of course, it's not a good feeling to see soldiers everywhere and to see people, being very concerned and feeling insecure. But for us, being Israeli, it's not a new situation. Unfortunately, we're used to that. About the last events, of course, it's very saddening that 2-3 months after I arrived, suddenly we witnessed this horrible terror attack in France.
In Paris, 130 people were killed. Your husband was nearly caught up in that violence, wasn't he?
Well, yeah, he was on the way to the stadium, and luckily enough, he had the change of plan in the last minute. But I was really shocked because I was at home and I was watching Homeland, an episode in Homeland, and when the news broke out, the first moment, I didn't know if this is part of the film, or part of the series, or is it reality? Unfortunately, it was a very sad reality.
There's this debate you'll be well aware of going on within the Jewish community after the attack of a Jewish teacher with a machete. And now French Jews are asking themselves, all these years after the Holocaust, whether they should hide their faith in public, whether they should stop wearing the traditional skull cap, the kippah, for their own safety. What do you make of that?
Look, this is a very personal, of course, decision, and I think it's up to each and everyone to decide whether he wants to wear a kippah or he doesn't. But I think it's very sad, either way, that the Jewish people, have even to think about this issue, that they have to think whether they would take the risk or not take the risk. The French government is doing its utmost to provide security for the Jewish community. They have policemen and soldiers deployed, in schools, in kindergartens, near the synagogues. So I think that we really appreciate very much the efforts that the French government is doing in that respect.
Given this context, the offer made by your Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to welcome French Jews with open arms has more resonance than ever. Many thousands have already made the move to Israel. Would you recommend more do so?
Again, I think that the decision to make Aliyah to Israel is a very personal decision, and this is up to each and every Jew to decide where he wants to live. Israel is, of course, a Jewish state. Israel is welcoming all the Jews that want to come to live in Israel because this is, the only Jewish country in the world. But I think, again, that the fact that Jews would like to go to Israel because they don't feel safe or because they're afraid, it's not the way. This should not be the reason.
You previously served as Israel's ambassador in Hungary.
True.
And anti-Semitism has been a problem there since the war. That was a particularly poignant posting for you, wasn't it?
It was, because I'm from Hungarian origin, and my grandparents, they were executed in the Holocaust. My father was also a Holocaust survivor. So this was actually the country where from where my grandparents were deported to Auschwitz. And it was a very difficult personal experience for me. Therefore, for me, it is very important to do everything that is possible in order to fight anti-Semitism, to encourage, education in that respect.
It's worth pointing out that France is home to both the biggest Jewish and Muslim populations in Europe.
Yes.
And while anti-Semitic acts last year topped 800, the number of Islamophobic acts tripled to around 400. Do you think the two communities are doing enough to come together and to stand united against all this hatred?
I think they are doing a lot. I think the inter-religious dialogue it does exist, here and elsewhere. I think maybe more should be done. And it is very important for the societies to get to know each other and to live together and to cooperate together against threats, against hate, against anti-Semitism, against Islamophobia, against people who really, they fight against democracies and human rights.
Your unhappy at the moment, Israel, about the EU's decision to label products from the Israeli settlements. But given that most of the world considers Israeli settlement activity to be illegal, why shouldn't European consumers have the choice as to what they're buying?
Because I think that it's not fair to discriminate Israel on that regard. There are more than 200 disputes, territorial disputes in the world, and the EU decided to focus on Israel and on Judea and Samaria. I think that the conflict that we have with the Palestinians is known, and the only way to try and solve it is to sit down around the negotiation table and discuss. The fact that the Palestinians are refusing to come, and our Prime Minister called them on several occasions in the last months, shows that there is no real will to do that. And the fact is that Mahmoud Abbas, he received a strategic decision 2-3 years ago when he decided to go via the international community to exert pressure on Israel, hoping that by cornering Israel, he will see the concessions by the Israeli government. Unfortunately, Israelis are not abiding by pressure, and we showed it in the past where we were ready to make territorial concessions when with Egypt, with Jordan, but it had to be because the population, the Israelis, saw that the other side is coming in good faith. When the other side is not perceived as coming in good faith, then the chance of concessions is really not very high.
Obviously, that's a particularly Israeli way of looking at things, and Palestinians would take a very different view and say that it was down to Israeli inflexibility that peace talks are not progressing. Just finally, I know relations with Sweden have been particularly difficult between Israel and Sweden since Sweden recognised Palestinian statehood. And now the Swedish foreign minister wants an independent investigation into the killing of over 150 Palestinians amid the recent spate of stabbing attacks against Israelis. What's wrong with that? Why shouldn't we look into whether Israeli security forces could have shown more restraint?
Because I think it's outrageous. I think that the aspiration or the desire to come and invest, to interfere into internal affairs, something that is not happening nowhere in Europe, I think it's outrageous.
No matter what's going on in Israel, the world doesn't have a right to...
No, everybody has the right to everything, but I mean, there is a limit to which, one picks on Israel being a democratic country who is really fighting for its democratic values. It's the only country, the only democratic country in the Middle East. The context into which we have to look at things is very, very worrying. The situation in the Middle East is deteriorating. Israel is surrounded by enemies, and to come and to start asking Israel or demanding from Israel to open up to an international investigations because, there is no trust or not enough belief in our democratic system, I think it's an insult. Really, it's an insult.
Really interesting to talk to you. Elisa Ben Noon, Israel's ambassador to France. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.